Okay, so today we are going to be talking about photosynthesis. We're going to introduce ourselves to the topic of photosynthesis, right? Like you might have learnt in your prior grades or in your prior lessons that plants make their own food, right? I think this is the definition that you used to have when you're doing your grade 7s or probably form 2s or below there. That green plants make their own food, and all plants are called to be producers, right? So when you are saying that plants are producers, we are trying to bring home the point that they do not go to the shops to buy some food when they are hungry, but rather they produce their own food. They make their own food when they want to nourish themselves, right? So photosynthesis is the topic that is going to be explaining more about how plants make their own food, right? And how they do it and what else they produce other than just food. We'll talk about what plants need to produce the food, what plants use to produce the food, where the food is produced, and what type of food is being produced. And we'll talk about again what will happen to that food or any other output that is produced by the plants, right? So our first statement that we have is that green plants are the food and oxygen producers of the living world, right? We get food and we get oxygen from green plants, right? That's our first point. And we are saying that they manufacture organic molecules from inorganic raw materials. We are saying that plants are taking something that is inorganic to produce something that is organic. They are taking some inputs that are inorganic to produce something that is organic, which is food and oxygen, right? And we are saying on our third point that animals rely on green plants to make food that provides them with energy and oxygen, right? All animals, they actually depend on green plants. Green plants make the food and produce energy which the animals then use. Okay, on our fourth point, we are mentioning that green plants are thus known as producers and animals are in turn known as consumers. So plants produce and animals consume. That's basically what you are bringing home there, right? Only green plants make food. Only green plants make food. We will talk about why we are keeping on emphasizing the part green plants, right, in a second, right? The process by which plants make food from inorganic materials is known as photosynthesis. We are now coming home now, right? Where we are saying that photosynthesis is the process by which green plants, I think you should highlight this point, you should underline this point, that is the process by which green plants use light energy to combine carbon dioxide and water into carbohydrates and releasing oxygen as a byproduct, right? So we are saying here that plants make their own food, yes, and the food that is being produced is in the form of carbohydrates. You're supposed to be noting this point, that we're not producing proteins, we're not producing fats, we're producing carbohydrates. That's the first point that you're supposed to be noting there as far as the end products are concerned. So we're saying that plants, they need two things for them to combine, for them to produce carbohydrates. They need carbon dioxide and they also need water. So we are saying that plants combine carbon dioxide and water using light energy. You're supposed to be noting this point, that we need only two things for us to, we need only two raw materials for the plants to photosynthesize. They need carbon dioxide and they need water. But these two, they cannot combine without the use of light energy. So light energy is being used to combine carbon dioxide and water, so as to produce carbohydrates, and they in turn release oxygen as a byproduct, right? So we can summarize all this by saying photosynthesis is the process of combining carbon dioxide and water using light, right? And you see that we have something that is called chlorophyll here, that is used to absorb the light energy. So chlorophyll is nothing but just the green pigment or the green color in green plants. That's why we are keeping on emphasizing that green plants, because the only plants that have chlorophyll are the ones that are able to photosynthesize, simply because chlorophyll is used to absorb, the green pigment in a leaf is used to absorb the light from the sun, and the light is then used to combine carbon dioxide and water, right? So as to produce carbohydrates and oxygen. So if a question comes in like, can you define photosynthesis? You're supposed to go like, photosynthesis is the process by which green plants use light energy to combine carbon dioxide and water, which are the raw materials here, into carbohydrates, or you can actually put glucose here, either way, and releasing oxygen as a byproduct. This is the definition that you're supposed to be having when you're asked to define photosynthesis, right? And when a question comes in like, what is the weight equation for photosynthesis? We're supposed to be seeing something like this, where we have carbon dioxide plus water, an arrow to indicate that we are producing carbohydrates, we are producing something, and here we are producing carbohydrates and oxygen, right? And don't forget to put the things that we use, right? The conditions that we use to combine these two. We need light, and the light is coming from the sun being absorbed by chlorophyll. And chlorophyll, we just mentioned that this is the green pigment on a leaf, or in a leaf, either way, right? So there are two types of carbohydrates made during photosynthesis, and these are, we have starch and we have and sugars, right? This part now, testing of either of these molecules in plants will show whether whether plants are making food or not, right? When we want to see whether the plant is photosynthesizing or is not photosynthesizing, we can just test for the presence of sugars or the presence of starch. So if there are sugars in a plant, it means that the plant is actually photosynthesizing. If there is starch in a plant, then it means that the plant is photosynthesizing indeed, right? I'm sure you are getting me up to now. Then we are saying that most plants produce, although other like cereals, produce sugars first. Instead of producing starch, they produce sugars first. When you're talking about all cereals, like maize, we're saying that they produce sugars first. Then the simple sugar compound, which is glucose. So sugars, glucose is just a simple sugar, right? So glucose is just a form of carbohydrate. If a plant produces glucose, it is converted to starch for storage. We cannot store carbohydrate in the form of glucose because glucose is soluble, right? But we can only store glucose in the form of starch. So if we produce glucose, we will then go ahead and the plant will then go ahead and convert it into starch so that it can store it, right? And at these points, I'm just explaining what we have just mentioned, that chlorophyll is the green pigment found in plants, right? And it is commonly found in plant leaves, right? I know there are other plants that have got stems that are green, but here we're mentioning that chlorophyll is usually found on plant leaves, right? In plant leaves, I mean to say. Then the purpose of chlorophyll is to absorb light energy from the sun and convert it into chemical energy that is then going to be used to be combining carbon dioxide and water, right? So it absorbs light energy from the sun, sorry for the typo here, which can then be used to manufacture food. Yeah, that's basically the introduction of photosynthesis. So the points that you're supposed to be noting are this: the definition of photosynthesis. You're supposed to know that what photosynthesis is. Number two, you're supposed to be knowing the weight equation for photosynthesis, right? So these two are the raw materials. These are the things that we need, that the plants need to photosynthesize, only carbon dioxide and water. But during the process, they will need to be using light, and light is absorbed by chlorophyll. and they produce food in the form of carbohydrates, and they also give out oxygen as a byproduct. These are the things that you're supposed to be noting at the very end of the day. Then defining chlorophyll, obvious, like chlorophyll is the green pigment that is found in plant leaves, right? And is used to absorb light energy from the sun and converting it into chemical energy. So these are the things that you're supposed to be knowing for a start as far as photosynthesis is concerned. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Please leave a comment below so that if there is something else that you might need clarity on, I can always respond to you. Okay, thank you.